Well, hello, Stacey Murphy here with a video on a topic that I am sure you have experienced at least once in your life if you are a gardener. It is that I have been neglecting my garden for the last month. It's hard for me to say that, but it's true. So no judgment. This happens from time to time, right? Life gets in the way. There are some things that take priority. When your friends and family need your help and your support, you go and you do that, and you try to take care of your garden as best you can, but sometimes you have to go on unexpected trips, and that's what happened to me. And so for the last month, I've really not been around for my garden, and I've asked, people to water it for me and to take care of little pieces of it, but really it's been neglected. So what do you do when you come back to a garden after neglecting it for a little while? Most likely what you're going to find is that you're probably going to have some pest or disease issues because you haven't been around to notice those things. And that's exactly what happened to me. So what I recommend, if you have neglected your garden a little bit, again, no judgment, it happens. So what you do is you go back to your garden, take a moment. You can feel the heartbreak, right? If there's some plants that have died, feel that heartbreak. I know that that happens. And I lost some plants. I'll tell you about it in just a minute. And then take a moment to see what is still vital in your garden and what can still thrive if you give it some attention. And so basically make a plan of action and just go for it. Don't dwell on this neglect, just move forward the best that you can. So here's what happened in my garden, just to give you a sense. The first thing that happened to me is that, yes, I had some diseases. So specifically to my tomatoes had some diseases, and I knew when I left that they were having some fungal spores on some of the leaves, and so I was staying ahead of it pretty well before I neglected. But when I came back, a lot of the plants were affected by some bacterial and fungal diseases. So what did I do? Well, essentially what I did with my tomatoes, they are indeterminate, which means they can grow forever. As long as the season is, they're just going to keep putting out new growth. So what I did is I came and I cut away all of the diseased parts of the plant very carefully. I washed and cleaned those scissors in between each plant, just in case each plant had a different disease. And then I kept the growth that looked really vital, and I know that those plants will continue to grow through the season. Will they produce as many tomatoes? Who knows, but at least I'll still get the tomatoes. So that's what I did for my tomatoes, and I'm going to watch them carefully. I'm going to try to stay ahead of any of those diseases that are present. And I also noticed in my fertility cycle for the season, because I grow year-round and I don't have an off-season, it was really time to put down more organic matter. So I actually added 2 inches of compost to my bed as well to kind of help boost the soil fertility, because what we know is that healthy soil produces healthy plants. So I was hoping that that combination of pulling away any diseased material and then infusing the soil with more organic matter would help those tomatoes thrive. And I went away this weekend after putting down that compost, and already the plants look healthier. So that's just incredible. All right, so that's what I did for my tomatoes. For the second thing that happened, this is kind of sad. So this is something that's never happened to me before, and it is actually not a matter of my neglect. It's actually it could come from many different sources. So the second thing that happened was nematodes. And nematodes essentially are underground, and they feed off the roots, and they're very, very tiny. They insert themselves into those roots, and what will happen is the roots start to swell up. They get these like nodules, these nodes on the roots. And what you'll see above ground is you'll see wilted leaves, essentially. You might see yellowing leaves. And in this case, my chard plant was like it was like splayed open. And I knew that it had enough water. And so what else would make it splay open? Well, somehow that water is not getting from the root into the plant. And that's essentially what's happening, is that the root nodules are holding all of that water back. So nematodes are harder to deal with, because nematodes are something that's present in the soil that can stick around for a long time. It's not a matter of my neglect so much. It could have come from the nursery where I got my seedlings. It could have come from the soil that I inherited, because I did not necessarily bring all this soil in. Other previous housemates brought a lot of the soil in. Could have been inherited through the compost that was brought in years ago. So it could have come from any place. The trick with nematodes is that it's a long-term issue, and it really takes a couple of years to get rid of it, and you need to kind of starve it out. So in the future, long term, I'm going to have to think about crop rotations and crops that aren't susceptible to nematodes and plant those. There's some tomato varieties, there's lima beans, there's some other various crops, hot peppers, that are resistant to the nematodes, and so basically starving them out over the years might be a possibility. In the short run, what I'm doing is I'm watching the plants in this bed because I don't want to pull out everything. So I'm noticing that my Swiss chard is very affected, so I'm pulling those out where I can, leaving some in if they still look okay. And I'm replacing them temporarily with French dwarf marigolds, which are something that is less susceptible to the nematodes. There's different ways that it could be possible that this is helping. Possibly the marigolds are pulling all the nematodes towards the marigolds. That's one thing that might be happening, and then starving them because it's less susceptible. There's a lot of things going on in the soil, and there's a lot of debate about how those marigolds are actually helping in this case. But I'm going to temporarily do that. And the other crops in the bed, I'm just watching. What's happening is that there is a squash plant that was born out of my compost that looks like it's doing well, so I'm leaving it. And my Malabar spinach looks like it's doing pretty well, so I'm leaving that for now. And there's one other crop, there is kale in the bed, but that leads me to my third issue. So the kale seems to be not affected by the nematodes, but my third issue is while I was gone, the rat population, we have tree rats in our area, and the summer explosion, they've been breeding, and they've been everywhere, and they have eaten all of my parsley down to nubbins, and they ate my kale plants down to nubbins. So that sucks. And what do you do about rats? Well, in this case, we do have some cats and some dogs that do hunt them, and I know that this is a temporary problem because the rat population really explodes in the summer, and in the winter, the rats that were here, they weren't going after my garden. So I may have to cage my garden from those rats, either temporarily or year-round. So that's what happened here while I was gone, a little bit of neglect, and things go south really quickly. So like I said, no judgment. If this is you, know that this happens to everybody. And what you can do is just think about, number one, take stock. Look at what things are just not going to make it. Pull them out. Don't think twice about it. Pull it out and replace it. The second thing you can do is look at what's vital and give it a boost. Maybe give it some extra compost, give it some extra worm poop, something that will help show that you're back and you mean business and you're here to nourish those plants because they can feel it and they're going to jump back. All right, Stacey Murphy here. See you on the next video.